Hey everybody, welcome back. This will likely be a short video, always a dangerous thing to say when you begin to create a video, but I believe it will be a short video. I really just wanted to hit a couple of loose ends in terms of managing activities, and it turns out in fact one of them, the activity library, is going to be more of a promissory note. It's something that we're currently building out. So I want to tell you about it a little bit, and it could very well be that by the time you're seeing this video and this course, that if you go where I show you, you may see where things are in our current activity library. But in the current build that I'm using, we've just deactivated that link as we work on things, so it in fact does not yet exist. But still I want to give you the concept. But what I'm going to do now is focus on the report side. So let's do that. So I'm going to log into peerScholar. Again, I'm logging into the standalone, just to be clear there, and then I'll log into the course we've mostly been in, the research ethics course. And we see a few new things just because I've been doing some stuff. But this is the demo that I used right back when I originally demoed the student experience. And again, it's as good as any. We can go into any of these things and manage, and that brings us back to the manage page here, where a lot of the things we've been talking about are. Let me actually get this up, get rid of that, and just have a little more real estate while we're talking here. There we go. So what I want to show you today has to do with, okay, we've gone through an activity, we've done the grading, and at the end of the activity, well, maybe we want to get some information out of the system. Now the natural thing with an integrated version of this is having a mark get passed back to your gradebook of your LMS, but that's one grade, right? It's the total grade that you created when you defined how you want your grading to happen. But of course there's a whole lot more information in the system, and so I want to kind of connect you with a couple things. You already know the student progress and grading, where you can kind of see what's going on there, and you can look at who's grading what, but to the side of this is what I want to show you. Right beside the view the distribution, and let's just be clear about two of these things. The view the distribution, what this is it just says, Steve, here's the peers I had, etc., when I went through the process, so we can see those sorts of things. But this other one that we're going to do, the little three dots on the side, this is about downloading information from the system. And what we've done here is basically, as users have been using it, we've been saying, what kind of things would you like from the system? And it's relatively easy for us to add to the list. So we've ended up with a relatively large list, broken down by phases, because it seems like people sometimes just want certain bits of information. Now these are all based on the settings that are appropriate for the activity, what data is actually in the system. But these are the things you can download. So first of all, if you want to be across all phases, so if you want the overall stuff, you have the peer ratings that were given during the assess phase when they assess their peers. You have the usefulness ratings that are how useful the feedback was, so that comes from the third phase. Self-assessments, which were the second phase. The inline comments that the student gave. The grading details you can actually output. The additional assessment. So this, by the way, this just gives you a sense. So often people will add those additional assessments because that's part of a research project they're doing or something like that. And so sometimes that's the data they want out of the system. And so you can download that. Now we've also kind of broken it down phase by phase. We've had people, for example, that actually want the student submissions. What did students submit in the first phase? And so you can download the actual compositions that were submitted, or in the case where it was attachments, you can download the attachments that were submitted. Similarly, in the assess phase, if you're using attachments, then in the assess, people often download the attachments. They may use a notation system within, like imagine Microsoft Word with its review functionality. They may use that to mark up the document and then reattach it back. And so you can get at those attachments that students are reattaching in the assess phase. And similarly on the reflect phase, the composition would be the revised composition or the revised attached file, etc. And you see we're starting to do little misc stuff. So people ask for things, we can add it to the list. So, just be aware that this exists, and it can allow you to get at all sorts of things. So let's just give you a sense. So if we chose peer ratings for etc., that's just going to download a file. It may not be a very rich file because this is just my demo process, but you see you're getting a CSV separated file which contains a whole bunch of the information that happened during that phase. And so if you want to get at specific stuff, and you see here blah blah blah, but this would be like the comments that people gave, and it's just, again, because we're using this as a demo, it's not quite as populated as it should be, or at least not as appropriately populated as it should be perhaps. But all the scores are there. Okay, and so for example, what grade would you give this composition out of 10? You see the scores that people gave for those various answers, and that can allow people to get at various data patterns they're interested in. All right, so know that that's there for the reports. And I guess while we're talking about this, the analytics, which is currently also going to be vamped quite a bit, this is another place where people can get at information about what happened. This will be more overall. So just so you have the distinction, those reports are more like if you want a line by line, you want to know specific things that happened for specific students, whereas the analytics are going to be more overall trends, things that happen, a grade distribution once we have all the grades completed. And this is another place again where if there's things that your users would like to see on that sort of overall level, please let us know. We will continue to fill this out. We have a bunch of ideas in mind right now, but we're going to continue to fill that out. Okay, so that's really all I have to say about the reports, just letting you know you can get that information out of there. So I want to talk a little bit about the activity library. Now, I'm going to talk about it like it doesn't exist, because right now it seemingly doesn't exist. But normally, when you're logged in, you will have options here. So you have a couple now, which is just your sort of profile account settings and your logout. But another option that you'll have here will be to go into the activity library. Okay. Now, again, we had a rudimentary version of this, but we've just dissociated that from the application for now because we're enriching it. So I want to give you a sense of what that'll entail, because a lot of users may be interested in this. The idea here is, okay, you are a professor, you perhaps spent a lot of time creating an activity that you hoped would accomplish a certain learning goal in the context of your class. And so given you've put time and effort into that, maybe you want to share it. Maybe other people might like to use your activity, or maybe you might like to use other people's activities. And so we want to promote sharing of activities, but we also want to promote an informed sharing of activities, an evidence-based sharing of activities, if you will. And so the library we're building out right now, these are some of the ideas that we're incorporating into it. So first of all, when somebody chooses to share an activity, and let me sort of back up, every activity an instructor has done is saved. You recall when you're creating a new activity, you can copy an existing one rather than starting from scratch. And so you have all your existing ones there. That functionality is absolutely there all the time. This is a little different. So the idea here is one where we're thinking more of a learning community. And so in this case, when a user chooses to share their activity, first of all, they decide who they want to share it with, how wide they want their sharing to go. And so it can be as little as no one. They're creating a personal library. Now, why would somebody do that given their things are already saved? Well, because of some of the features I'm going to tell you about, the ability to search and to get a little bit of data. So they may share with no one. It may be for their own personal consumption. They may choose to share with others at their institution, but wish to keep it within that institutional boundary. Or they can say, I'm going to share with the world, any user that's interested. Okay, so that'll be the first aspect of it. When they choose to share, we're going to ask them to tag the activity in a number of ways. So with respect to the discipline and level, for sure, and with respect to the learning goals, but we'll also have things like, did you use a rubric, or did you have students use a rubric, and which rubric did they use, etc. A bunch of information that kind of gives a little bit more information about the activity itself. And the important part of this is, of course, it will provide a means for filtering, so that when somebody is looking in the activity library, if they want to look for a third-year level calculus activity, they could search on those bases or any other basis that's tagged and find activities that satisfy those filters. And so that can, as this library grows, that will allow it to be searched effectively. But we don't just want it to be searchable based on these tagged attributes. We also want to bring in some data, and we're thinking of a number of different ways of doing this, but here's the idea. When somebody uses somebody else's activity, so they check it out of the library and say, I'm going to use this, if they use it as is, or at least pretty much as is, if they don't modify too much, so this is what we're kind of thinking about. Let's say they modify a little bit. Maybe we'll keep track of the variance. So we imagine a parent activity and some children of that activity that are, just a parameter or two away in certain ways. In those cases, so when the process begins by pulling an activity from the library, then we're going to have some additional assessments kind of get built into that activity. And these are questions that the students will be asked at various steps of the process. So you've seen these additional comments. Remember, at the end of every phase, as people leave, you can ask them a couple of questions. And so we're essentially going to pre-populate some questions that will get at things like, how engaging did the students find this activity? How heavy did they find the workload of doing it? And all sorts of things like that. So it could be like, how much did they feel it made them think critically? How much do they feel it made them think creatively, etc. It won't be a long list. We will try to we'll try to zero in about the 4 or 5 things we think an educator might be considering when they're considering using an activity. But the idea is we'll actually have some student feedback. And each time the activity is used, that population of feedback will grow. And I mean, the activity again will start to be considered more of a family of activities as people do slight variance, but you'll still have a sense of the sort of average attributes for that family. And so that'll allow instructors to do things like, I want a highly engaging activity. Here's what I consider a reasonable amount of workload. And yeah, I would love to provoke critical thought or creative thought. And so they can add that to some of their other filter things and get it down. We're also, as we work through this, we imagine we would like to get the professors' perceptions after they use an activity. So if they used an activity, they may receive an email that asks for them to answer a few quick questions that can also be added to it. And so the idea here is we like to kind of, leverage the power of the crowd to find really powerful activities, ones that students find engaging, ones that professors think really have strong learning benefits. And ultimately, those will become things that are very easy for others to use. So instructors who want to find a very powerful, engaging activity can do so with very little effort and, fire that up, maybe make a change or two, and off they go. So to really kind of ease the setup while maximizing the pedagogy. That's the goal of this. Okay, so yeah, sounds great, doesn't exist. Yeah, kind of like Santa Claus or something like that, right? But it will exist. It's coming to be. So keep an eye out for that. When it does exist, I will likely post a video that kind of walks you through that a little bit more. All right. So that's it for my reports and activity library video. We will go on to the final segment of the course where we start to look at different pedagogical models that you can use in peerScholar and how they work. Alrighty, cool. Thanks for sticking with the course so far. See you in part 4. Alrighty.